Hi guys, in this video we're going to be talking about chemistry, mass, and volume. This is Mrs. Gassel. We're going to be using some Cornell paper here in just a little bit, but first I wanted to talk about what objective this goes with. So we are in Unit 1, and this goes with Objective 2, and Objective 2 says that students will be able to define chemistry, mass, and volume, and identify units with appropriate metric prefixes. So that's what we're going to talk about in this video. So go ahead and get out your Cornell paper. So here we are with our Cornell paper. I'm going to fill this one out with you. First off, we're going to be talking about Objective 2, which I like to abbreviate sometimes. And our main goal here is to discuss those definitions that we were talking about. So we're going to write definitions here. Your name, class period, and date would go in this box. That's going to be depending on when you're watching this video, so we're not going to write that down. And then we're going to fill in some essential questions. So our first question is mass and volume. What are they and how do you measure them? And our second question is what are metric prefixes? So we're going to answer those two questions here. Whoops, two fingers makes it get bigger. Sorry about that. All right, we're going to use those two questions to kind of guide our notes here. So we're going to go ahead and start. Now the first thing we're going to start with is the definition of chemistry. So let me go ahead and pull that up. Chemistry is the study of matter and how it changes. So the whole point of chemistry is to figure out what is matter. Matter is another word we're going to write down here in just a second, but it's what we're studying in chemistry, and we also want to know how it changes. So there's two parts to what we're learning about in chemistry. So let's define matter. Matter is anything that has mass and takes up space. So when we're talking about chemistry, we're kind of talking about everything, because everything that has mass and takes up space, well, that's pretty much everything. So chemistry is really concerned about that matter, and again, we're really concerned with how it changes. So let's go ahead and talk about those other two words. Now, they actually, mass and volume, just showed up in that definition of matter there, so we'll go ahead and talk about them. And I really like charts, so I'm going to make a couple of charts here. So let me make a space for that. So I'm going to put something here. This is going to distinguish it. So we're going to talk over here about one thing and over here about another. And on this first side, we're going to talk about definitions. And on the second side, we're going to talk about measurement of that thing. So let's go ahead and start with, how about mass? So mass is the amount of matter, and what we're talking about is really particles. And when we measure mass, we use a balance, and our balances are electronic. You may have seen a triple beam balance in middle school. It's been a long time since you probably used one of those. The digital balances are quite a bit more reliable as long as they're calibrated appropriately, giving you the measure of mass. Now the unit that we use is the gram. There's other units for mass that you could use, like a kilogram, or the British unit is actually called the slug. It's pretty cool. But we are going to be using grams here in chemistry class. So let's go ahead and talk about volume next. Let's do green. Volume is the amount of space that something takes up. So you can see we've talked about matter. Matter we defined as something that has mass and takes up space. And now we've talked about mass and that space that we're taking up. So anything that has a mass and a volume that you could measure would be considered matter. So we've got the volume here. It's the amount of space. This is really talking about the size of something. When we measure volume, we could use a variety of methods. One of them is to, do your good old geometry, length times width times height. If it is a cube or a rectangular prism sort of thing, any of those other shapes would work too. Cones, spheres, there's a formula for figuring out the volume of those. Sometimes though you have an irregular object, and so we do something called water displacement, where we measure how much water we had to begin with, we stick it in the water, and we measure how much water we have now, and then however much the water gained, that's the volume of the object. So there's a bunch of different ways that you could do it. When we write down the measurement, we are going to use a couple of different units. The first of which is the milliliter, which is fun to try and spell. It's got a lot of I's and L's in it. Milliliter. That's what we use here in chemistry class. There are other units like the milliliter called the liter, and there's kiloliters and all sorts of other things there that we use to measure volume. But milliliter is the one you're going to come across in chemistry a lot. And there's one other one, the cubic centimeter, which is abbreviated with a cm and a little 3. And notice that little 3 is up high. Let me draw a little arrow there. That 3 is up high. If you have been in Mrs. Gassler's room, my room, there's a poster on the wall above one of the whiteboards that shows the difference between superscript and subscript and capital and lowercase letters. The C and the M are both lowercase, so they take up about half of the line, and that little 3 is smaller than a big 3, a regular 3, and it is up high above that M. That is called superscript, so that is CM with a superscript 3. It's like an exponent that you would use in math class, and it literally means cubed. So you have centimeters times centimeters times centimeters. That's how you find the volume, length times width times height. So that's the unit that we use there. So there's milliliters, which is an M and a capital L, and centimeters cubed, which is a cm and a little 3. So now might be a good time to stop and make a little summary of the notes on this page. The Cornell notes, the way they work, you write a summary here, and there's also this this bar on the left side of the paper is for you to write questions, and that's so that you can quiz yourself a little bit later. So write some questions about chemistry and matter that you could answer by looking at the notes. So, whoops, sorry, don't mean to do that. So that's going to be the first half of the notes here. So we've answered the question, mass and volume, what are they, and how do you measure them? So now we're going to flip over to the next page, and we're going to finish talking about the other question, which was what are metric prefixes? And we're also going to talk about why they matter, which is part of what they are. So let's get a definition of those up here. So metric prefixes are what we're going to be defining, and I've written them in different colors so we can talk about the words themselves. So let's talk about prefixes first. That's one that a lot of people are familiar with. You might know what a prefix is from your English classes. This is something that goes in front of a word like con or un or pro that changes the meaning of the word just a little bit. So it goes in front of the word. Metric prefixes go in front of the word also. Metric is a little bit different. Metric actually literally means based on the meter. But if you get this based on business, that kind of actually helps you the most. Because we do use metric prefixes with more than just a meter. So let's go ahead and write that definition up here. So a metric prefix is a word or words that are added to a base unit to represent a number, and they actually represent a multiplier. So let's talk first about these base units, and we'll make a list right over here of some base units. And they include things like grams, liters, and meters. There's others too that we might be using, but these are the ones we're going to come across the most often to begin with. Grams are a lowercase g, liters are a capital L, and meters are an M. So then the other part, of the metric prefix is going to be the prefix itself. Now there's actually quite a few different prefixes out there, but the three that we're going to be using are kilo, centi, and milli. And it might look like kilo goes with grams and centi goes with liters and milli goes with meters, but that's not how it works here. Any one of these three can be connected to any one of those other ones. So it could go that way. Liters could be kilo, centi, or milli, and meters could be kilo, centi, or milli. So, and then again, there's other prefixes that might also be used. Kilo, when we write kilo, we put a K on the front of it. Maybe you've seen that, kilograms. C is for centi. You've probably seen that on a centimeter. and M is for milli, but these are always attached to something, so there's always something in this little blank here. You could see G, L, or M for meters all by itself, but you will not see K for kilo by itself. So kilo means that we're going to be multiplying by 1,000. Centi is a little bit different. We're going to be dividing by 100. This is, or multiplying by 0.01. That would be the same thing. So a centi is quite a bit smaller than a kilo. In fact, if you had a kilogram, a regular gram, and a centigram, the kilogram would be the biggest. Milli means dividing by 1,000, so it's kind of like the inverse of a kilo. Instead of multiplying by 1,000, you would be multiplying by 1,000ths. So the purpose of using these prefixes is because sometimes you have a really big number and you don't want to write out all those zeros, or maybe you want to abbreviate your number a little bit, round it a little bit smaller. So we might be using a kilo, centi, or milli. In our class, remember we had cubic centimeters and regular grams and milliliters. So kilograms are something that's quite a bit bigger. We probably won't be using those very much in class. But the metric prefixes are very helpful. So at this point, what you might want to do is, whoops, I zoomed out again. There's the question column there on the left side that you might want to put some questions down in, and then a summary of the second page of notes here. To turn in this assignment, all you have to do is take a picture of your notes, all of your notes, not just half. So if you wrote on the front and the back, take a picture of both and submit them to that assignment, and then let your teacher know that you need it to be graded. Thanks for watching. Have a good day.